My children moved me to the cheapest nursing home. They didn't know I owned it. The chipped linoleum under my sensible shoes seemed to mock the grandeur I was accustomed to, a stark contrast to the whispered promises of care my children had made. Was this truly the best they could do, this faded pastel corridor that smelled faintly of antiseptic and disappointment? I'd always believed in subtle elegance, in comfortable sophistication, not this stark, utilitarian presentation. But then, my children had always had a peculiar way of interpreting the best. I wondered if they'd chosen this place based on its listed price, a testament to their own burgeoning financial anxieties that they'd so conveniently projected onto me. Perhaps, in their minds, this was a sacrifice they were making, a way to manage their own perceived burden. My own children, the ones I'd poured my life into, the ones I'd painstakingly guided through every childhood scrape and adolescent doubt, had delivered me to a place that screamed economy louder than any billboard. They seemed so proud of their efficiency, their calculated decision. I smoothed the fabric of my cardigan, a garment of fine merino wool, purchased not from a discount bin, but from a boutique known for its timeless pieces. The children hadn't even bothered to help me unpack my single suitcase, opting instead for a quick peck on my cheek and a hurried wave goodbye, leaving me to navigate the unfamiliar territory of Maplewood Haven on my own. Haven. The irony wasn't lost on me. It felt more like a waiting room for oblivion. As I stood there, a lone figure in a sea of muted tones and the gentle hum of unseen machinery, I couldn't help but feel a pang of something close to amusement, quickly followed by a familiar ache of disillusionment. They'd assured me it was clean, safe, and had a lovely garden. I'd seen pictures, of course, generic, stock photos that could have been taken anywhere. But seeing it, smelling it, feeling the atmosphere of it, that was an entirely different experience. It was a place that whispered of neglect, not of comfort. A kindly-faced woman in a faded blue uniform approached, her name tag reading, Brenda. Her smile was genuine, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Welcome, dear. Are you settling in all right? I'm Brenda, one of the care assistants." Her tone was warm, unhurried, a stark contrast to the hurried efficiency I'd half expected. She didn't fuss, didn't hover, just offered a steady presence. "Just need to get you to your room," she continued, gesturing down the hallway. "It's not the Ritz, I know, but we do our best to make everyone feel at home." The "not the Ritz" comment hung in the air, a gentle acknowledgement of the facility's apparent limitations. Brenda's words, though simple, held a quiet dignity that resonated with me. She seemed to understand the unspoken anxieties of a new resident, and her understated compassion was a small balm. As she led me, I couldn't help but observe the facility more closely. Beyond the initial impression of frugality, there were subtle details that caught my eye. The floors, while chipped, were immaculately clean. The scent of antiseptic was, in fact, a testament to rigorous cleaning protocols. And Brenda's genuine smile, the warmth in her eyes. These were not things you could simply purchase. These were qualities that spoke of a dedicated team, perhaps one that understood the true meaning of care, even in less than ideal surroundings. My room was small, functional, with a single bed, a wardrobe, and a small bedside table. A window offered a view of a patch of grass that, from this distance, Brenda's description of a lovely garden felt like a significant stretch. It was more of a well-maintained patch of green. But as Brenda helped me arrange my few belongings, I noticed the quality of the linens, the surprisingly comfortable mattress. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean and well-maintained. And Brenda's gentle efficiency, her quiet hum as she worked, put me at ease. She didn't rush, didn't make me feel like an inconvenience. She simply did her job with a quiet competence that I appreciated immensely. It was in those small gestures, the way she tucked the blanket just so, the way she asked if I needed anything before leaving me to unpack, that I began to see beyond the initial surface-level impression. There was a quiet strength here, a dedication that transcended the decor. As Brenda excused herself, promising to check in later, I looked around my new, humble abode. It was far from what I was accustomed to, but perhaps, I mused, it wasn't quite the catastrophe my children had so readily painted it to be. And if you found this opening intriguing, please consider subscribing to our channel for the continuation of this remarkable story. The silence of the room, after Brenda's departure, settled around me like a shroud, but it was a silence punctuated by the quiet hum of my own thoughts. My children, bless their misguided hearts, had certainly outdone themselves this time. They'd orchestrated my relocation to this establishment with such a proprietary air, as if they'd discovered some hidden gem of financial prudence. The sheer audacity of their conviction that they were making a sensible, even altruistic decision was almost admirable, if it wasn't so profoundly irritating. They saw the price tag, the advertised amenities, and probably a few carefully selected testimonials online, and declared victory. They'd never had to asterisk on anything. They'd inherited a comfortable legacy, a foundation built by my husband and myself, and they'd never truly understood the responsibility, the meticulous planning, the sheer parcolo, amongst others, that went into building and maintaining a substantial enterprise. Maplewood Haven, the name itself, was a testament to marketing over substance. Haven implied sanctuary, safety, a place of refuge. What I saw was a place designed for efficiency, for housing a population with minimal fuss and maximum cost-effectiveness. It was a business, and a poorly executed one at that, if first impressions were anything to go by. My children, in their youthful exuberance for fiscal responsibility, had effectively demoted me to the status of a cost-saving measure. I walked over to the window, pulling aside the thin beige curtains. Brenda had been right, it wasn't the Ritz, but her assessment of the garden was a generous interpretation. It was a rectangular patch of grass, meticulously mowed, bordered by a few hardy rose bushes that looked perpetually thirsty. A single forlorn park bench sat beneath a mature oak tree, its branches casting long, melancholic shadows. It was presentable, like a well-meaning but uninspired attempt at hospitality. My gaze drifted back to the room. The linens were indeed clean, a crisp white that suggested frequent laundering. The mattress, while not the plush expanse of my own bed at home, was surprisingly firm and supportive. These were practical considerations, the sort that a competent manager would ensure were met. But where was the soul? Where was the touch of personalization that made a place feel like a home rather than a cell? I opened my suitcase. My children, in their rush, hadn't even offered to help. It was a small thing, a gesture. But gestures, I'd learned over the decades, were the currency of genuine affection. They'd deposited me, like a piece of furniture to be stored, and then vanished, presumably to celebrate their financial acumen. I'd packed a few familiar items, things that held memories and meaning. A framed photograph of my late husband, his eyes sparkling with a mischievous humor I still missed every day. A small collection of poetry, its pages dog-eared and worn from countless readings. A silk scarf, a vibrant splash of color in this sea of muted tones. As I placed the photograph on the bedside table, a wave of something akin to defiance washed over me. My children thought they had solved a problem. They thought they had neatly tucked me away. They were wrong. They had underestimated me, as they always had. They saw a frail, elderly woman, dependent and easily managed. They didn't see the woman who had co-founded a successful international import-export business, who had navigated hostile takeovers, who had personally overseen the construction of 3 major office buildings. They didn't see the woman who, at 78, still enjoyed a sharp game of bridge and a glass of single malt scotch. They also, crucially, didn't know I owned Maplewood Haven. The acquisition had been a diversification. A quiet venture, undertaken a few years ago, a small investment in a sector that seemed stable and, frankly, underserved by truly quality care. I'd been looking for opportunities to reinvest some of my considerable capital, to build something tangible that contributed to society, rather than simply shuffling numbers. Maplewood Haven had presented itself as a distressed asset, a place with potential that had been squandered by incompetent management. I'd seen the underlying structure, the solid bones of the building, and recognized the operational inefficiencies that were dragging it down. My team had acquired it for a fraction of its potential value, and we'd been quietly implementing a phased renovation and a complete overhaul of the management and care protocols. We were aiming for a subtle, understated excellence, a place that prioritized genuine comfort and dignity over flashy appearances. And now, my own children had delivered me, the owner, the architect of its potential revival, to the very place they believed to be the epitome of frugal living. The irony was so rich, so delicious that a small smile, unbidden, curved my lips. I continued unpacking. Each item I placed felt like a small act of reclamation. The poetry book, with its familiar weight in my hands, was a reminder of my own inner world, a world my children rarely acknowledged. The silk scarf, draped over the back of the chair, was a whisper of the elegance they'd so readily discarded for me. Brenda reappeared a short while later, her smile as warm as before. "Just checking in," she said, her voice gentle. "Need anything else, dear? A glass of water? Perhaps a cup of tea?" "Thank you, Brenda," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "Just a glass of water would be lovely." As she went to fetch it, I surveyed my new surroundings once more. The room was simple, yes, but it was clean, it was functional. And Brenda, bless her, was a beacon of genuine human connection in this sea of institutional beige. She wasn't just an employee. She was a caregiver. And that, I knew, was the most important commodity any establishment like this could offer. My children had made their decision based on what they perceived to be my needs, or rather, their financial constraints. They hadn't asked me what I wanted or what I might prefer. They had assumed. And assumptions, as I had learned over a lifetime of business dealings, were the quickest route to disaster. As Brenda returned with a glass of chilled water, condensation beating on its surface, I felt a surge of something akin to anticipation. This was an unexpected, and frankly rather amusing, turn of events. My children, in their earnest desire to be fiscally responsible, had unwittingly delivered their mother, the silent proprietor, to her own asset. The stage was set, and I, the unsuspecting resident, was about to play a rather unique role. The next few days were a quiet observation. I engaged with the staff, spoke with the other residents, and took in the rhythms of Maplewood Haven. Brenda remained a constant source of gentle reassurance, her dedication evident in her every interaction. I saw her patiently assisting a resident with dementia, her voice soft as she guided him through a simple meal. I witnessed her sharing a quiet laugh with another, a moment of genuine camaraderie that transcended the transactional nature of their relationship. These were not the actions of someone simply punching a clock. These were the actions of someone who cared. I also noticed the subtle but undeniable improvements that were already underway, even before my children's ill-conceived intervention. The floors, while still showing their age, were being meticulously polished. Minor repairs were being carried out with quiet efficiency. There was a sense of subtle transformation in the air, a whisper of change that spoke of a guiding hand, a vision for something better. My children visited once more, a week after my arrival. They brought a wilting bouquet of supermarket flowers and the same air of self-congratulation. "How are you settling in, Mother?" my son David asked, his voice laced with an almost patronizing concern. "It's adequate," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "We knew you'd appreciate the value," my daughter Sarah chimed in, beaming. "It's so much more cost-effective than those luxury places. And it's clean, isn't it? That's what matters most at our age." "Cleanliness is certainly a virtue," I conceded, my gaze drifting to the framed photograph of my husband. "But there are other virtues too: dignity, comfort, a sense of being truly cared for." They exchanged a brief, almost imperceptible glance, a silent acknowledgement of my veiled critique. They weren't equipped to understand the nuances, the deeper meaning I sought. They were focused on the bottom line, on the tangible metrics of their decision. "Well, we can't have everything, can we?" David said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "This is sensible, it's responsible." Responsible. The word felt like a stone in my mouth. Their version of responsibility was to offload me, to reduce their perceived burden. My version of responsibility was to build, to nurture, to create something that offered genuine value and purpose. As they prepared to leave, Sarah leaned in and gave me a perfunctory kiss on my cheek. "We'll visit again soon, Mother. We're so glad you're safe." Safe. Not happy. Not content. Not thriving. Just safe. After they had gone, the silence of the room felt different. It was no longer a silence of isolation, but a silence pregnant with possibility. I had allowed my children to believe they had made a decisive move, a triumphant act of financial prudence. Now, it was time to reveal the truth, not with anger or recrimination, but with the quiet authority of ownership. I picked up my mobile phone, a sleek, modern device that starkly contrasted with the retro charm of the room's furnishings. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name, Arthur Finch. Arthur was my trusted legal counsel, a man of impeccable discretion and sharp intellect. "Arthur," I said, my voice clear and resolute. "It's Eleanor. I have a rather interesting situation I need your assistance with." I proceeded to explain the predicament, the well-intentioned but misguided actions of my children, and my own unique position as the owner of Maplewood Haven. Arthur listened patiently, his usual professional calm unwavering. "So, to clarify, Eleanor," he said, his voice carefully measured, "your children believe they have placed you in a budget-friendly nursing home, unaware that you are, in fact, the proprietor of the facility?" "Precisely, Arthur. And I find myself in a rather unique position to observe their decision-making process firsthand. I believe it's time we implemented a subtle shift in management strategy." Arthur chuckled, a low, dry sound. "A subtle shift indeed. I can see the potential for a most educational experience for your children. Educational and perhaps a lesson in the importance of genuine filial respect, rather than mere financial calculation," I replied. "I want you to arrange a meeting with the senior management team at Maplewood Haven. I want them to be aware of my ownership, but not to reveal the full extent of my relationship with the current residents, particularly my children, just yet. We need to be strategic about this." "Understood, Eleanor. I will convene the team at your earliest convenience. And might I say, this is a rather novel approach to resolving familial disagreements. Life, Arthur, is rarely as simple as a balance sheet. And sometimes, the best way to address a problem is to understand it from the inside out. My children believe they are managing an asset. I, on the other hand, am building a legacy. And that legacy, I intend, will be one of genuine care and unwavering dignity." The following week, I met with Arthur and the Maplewood Haven management team. The atmosphere in the conference room was initially one of subdued professionalism, tinged with a certain apprehension. They knew I was a significant investor, but the full scope of my involvement had been kept deliberately vague. Arthur began by outlining the company's overarching vision, emphasizing the commitment to quality care and resident well-being. He spoke of long-term strategic goals, of investing in staff development and facility upgrades. Then, he turned to me. "And now," Arthur said, his gaze meeting mine, a silent acknowledgement of the charade we were maintaining, "I'd like to hand over to our esteemed principal owner, Mrs. Eleanor Vance." A hush fell over the room. The principal owner. The words hung in the air, heavy with significance. The faces of the management team registered a mixture of surprise and, I suspected, a dawning realization. They had been operating under the assumption of a distant, financially motivated investor. Now, they were looking at the architect of their future, a woman who had walked their halls, experienced their care, and, apparently, was intimately familiar with their every operational detail. "Good afternoon, everyone," I began, my voice calm and measured. "I appreciate you all taking the time to be here. As you know, Maplewood Haven represents a significant investment for me. I've been following its progress with great interest, and I've been particularly impressed by the dedication I've witnessed from many of you, especially from individuals like Brenda, who embodies the spirit of genuine care that we strive for." I paused, letting my words sink in. I could see the wheels turning in their minds. They were trying to reconcile the budget-friendly perception with the reality of my ownership, with the implied standards I was setting. "I've also been spending some time here as a resident," I continued, a slight smile playing on my lips. "And while the staff are commendable, I believe there are areas where we can, and indeed must, elevate our standards. My children, bless them, believe they have made a fiscally prudent decision by placing me here. They see it as a cost-saving measure, a way to manage their own financial responsibilities." A few hesitant chuckles rippled through the room. They were beginning to grasp the exquisite irony. "However," I declared, my voice taking on a firmer tone, "Maplewood Haven is not merely a cost-saving measure, it is an opportunity. An opportunity to provide exceptional care, to create a true haven for our residents, a place where dignity and comfort are paramount. And as the owner, I intend to see that vision realized." I spent the next hour detailing a comprehensive plan for upgrades, for enhanced staff training, for a more personalized approach to resident care. I spoke of creating dedicated activity programs, of improving the dining experience, of transforming the grounds into something truly beautiful. I outlined the capital investment that would be immediately available to support these initiatives. The management team listened intently, their initial apprehension replaced by a growing sense of excitement and purpose. They understood that I wasn't just a passive investor, I was an active participant, someone who was willing to invest not just capital, but also her time and her vision. As the meeting concluded, the atmosphere was palpably different. The subtle hum of anxiety had been replaced by a buzz of anticipation. They had been given a clear mandate, a renewed sense of purpose, and the resources to achieve it. Later that evening, back in my room, I looked out at the darkening sky. The patch of grass, still looking rather uninspired, seemed less significant now. It was merely a backdrop. The real substance lay within the walls, within the people who dedicated themselves to the well-being of others, and within the owner who was now ready to steer this ship towards a brighter horizon. My children had, in their own way, brought me home. They had, inadvertently, given me the perfect vantage point to not only observe their misguided notions of filial duty, but also to begin the work I had intended all along, to make Maplewood Haven a true testament to genuine care, a place where every resident, including their own mother, felt truly valued and respected. The cheapest nursing home, as they so proudly proclaimed it to be, was about to become the most exceptional, and the lesson for my children, I suspected, was only just beginning. The true cost, they would soon learn, was not in the price tag, but in the absence of love, respect, and understanding. And that was a price I was no longer willing to pay, nor willing to allow anyone else to impose. The quiet revolution had begun. The following weeks at Maplewood Haven unfolded with a deliberate, almost theatrical calm on my part. I continued my role as a resident, a model of quiet acceptance, while simultaneously orchestrating a subtle but far-reaching transformation behind the scenes. Arthur Finch proved to be an invaluable ally, a master of discreet operations and a shrewd strategist. He managed the immediate implementation of my directives, ensuring that the senior management team understood the urgency and importance of the changes I envisioned. The first visible shifts were minor, almost imperceptible to the casual observer, but significant to those who knew what to look for. The quality of the linens, already good, was subtly improved, with a higher thread count and a more luxurious feel. The meals, while not yet gourmet, began to showcase a greater variety of fresh, seasonal ingredients, prepared with more care and presented with a touch more artistry. Brenda, bless her observant soul, noticed the changes immediately. Her smile grew brighter, her interactions with residents carried an even greater air of confidence, as if she too sensed a positive shift in the establishment's ethos. My children, David and Sarah, visited again a fortnight after my initial arrival. They arrived bearing a rather sad-looking bunch of supermarket daisies and the same air of self-congratulation. "Mother, how are you settling in?" David asked, his tone still carrying that faint patronizing note. "It's comfortable, David," I replied, my voice smooth and unruffled. I had perfected the art of the diplomatic answer, one that offered just enough information to satisfy, without revealing the vast chasm between their perception and the reality. "We're so glad," Sarah chirped, her eyes scanning the room with a critical yet ultimately satisfied gaze. "It's good to see you're in such sensible surroundings. We really did you a favor, you know. Think of the savings." "Indeed," I murmured, my gaze falling on the photograph of my late husband. He would have found this entire situation endlessly amusing. "The savings are noteworthy. And the staff seem nice enough, don't they?" David added, leaning back against the wall. "Efficient. That's what you need at your age, Mother. Efficiency." Quote. "Efficiency is certainly important," I agreed, a small knowing smile playing on my lips. "But so is kindness, and a genuine understanding of what truly makes a place feel like a home." They exchanged another one of those fleeting glances, the silent language of siblings who believed they understood the world, and their mother, far better than anyone else. They saw my comfort as a validation of their financial acumen, not as a consequence of my carefully orchestrated plan. "Well, we can't have everything, can we?" David said, a dismissive wave of his hand encompassing the entire establishment. "This is responsible. It's what we could afford." Responsible. The word echoed in my mind, a stark reminder of their limited perspective. Their definition of responsibility was to divest themselves of what they perceived as a burden. My definition was to nurture, to build, to create something of lasting value. As they prepared to depart, Sarah leaned in, her perfunctory kiss on my cheek a fleeting touch. "We'll come by again soon, Mother. We just want to know you're safe." Safe. Not happy, not content, not thriving, just safe. The word landed with a dull thud, a confirmation of their underlying fear, their inability to conceive of me as anything other than fragile and dependent. After they had gone, the silence of the room felt different. It was no longer the silence of isolation, but a silence pregnant with anticipation, with the quiet hum of a plan unfolding. I picked up my sleek mobile phone, a stark contrast to the room's muted tones, and scrolled through my contacts. "Arthur," I said, my voice steady and resolute, "it's Eleanor. I have a rather interesting situation I need your assistance with." I recounted the details of my children's well-intentioned but misguided actions, their belief that they had secured my well-being through financial prudence, and my own unique position as the owner of Maplewood Haven. Arthur listened, his usual calm demeanor unwavering. "So, to clarify, Eleanor," he said, his voice measured, "your children believe they have placed you in a budget-friendly nursing home, unaware that you are, in fact, the proprietor of the facility?" "Precisely, Arthur. And I find myself in a rather unique position to observe their decision-making process firsthand. I believe it's time we implemented a subtle shift in management strategy." Arthur chuckled, a low, dry sound. "A subtle shift, indeed. I can see the potential for a most educational experience for your children. Educational, and perhaps a lesson in the importance of genuine filial respect rather than mere financial calculation," I replied. "I want you to arrange a meeting with the senior management team at Maplewood Haven. I want them to be aware of my ownership, but not to reveal the full extent of my relationship with the current residents, particularly my children, just yet. We need to be strategic about this." "Understood, Eleanor. I will convene the team at your earliest convenience." And might I say, this is a rather novel approach to resolving familial disagreements. Life, Arthur, is rarely as simple as a balance sheet. And sometimes, the best way to address a problem is to understand it from the inside out. My children believe they are managing an asset. I, on the other hand, am building a legacy. And that legacy, I intend, will be one of genuine care and unwavering dignity. The following week, the meeting was convened in a small, nondescript conference room within Maplewood Haven. Arthur and I sat at the head of a long, polished table. The senior management team, a collection of department heads, including the operations manager, the head of activities, and the head nurse, filed in, their expressions a mixture of professional deference and quiet curiosity. They knew me as a significant investor. a benefactor whose capital had quietly revitalized certain aspects of the facility, but the full extent of my involvement, the depth of my vision, remained a carefully guarded secret. Arthur began, his voice smooth and authoritative. He spoke of the establishment's recent performance, highlighting the improvements that had already been made, attributing them to the dedication of the management team and the strategic investment of a key stakeholder, me. He then turned to me, a subtle nod, indicating it was my turn. "And now," Arthur announced, his gaze meeting mine, a silent acknowledgement of the charade we were maintaining, "I'd like to hand over to our esteemed principal owner, Mrs. Eleanor Vance." A collective intake of breath rippled through the room. Principal owner. The words hung in the air, a subtle seismic shift. Faces that had previously been composed now registered a distinct flicker of surprise, followed by a slow dawning of understanding. They had seen me as a distant, albeit important, financial backer. Now they were looking at the architect of their future, the woman who had walked their halls, experienced their care, and, it seemed, was intimately familiar with their every operational detail. "Good afternoon, everyone," I began, my voice calm and steady, projecting an aura of quiet authority. "I appreciate you all taking the time to be here. As you know, Maplewood Haven represents a significant investment for me. I've been following its progress with great interest, and I've been particularly impressed by the dedication I've witnessed from many of you, especially from individuals like Brenda, who embodies the spirit of genuine care that we strive for." I paused, letting my words settle. I could see the gears turning in their minds. They were trying to reconcile the budget-friendly perception with the reality of my ownership, with the implied standards I was now setting. "I've also been spending some time here as a resident," I continued, a faint smile touching my lips. "And while the staff are commendable, I believe there are areas where we can, and indeed must, elevate our standards. My children, bless them, believe they have made a fiscally prudent decision by placing me here. They see it as a cost-saving measure, a way to manage their own financial responsibilities." A few hesitant chuckles rippled through the room. The exquisite irony of the situation was not lost on them. They were beginning to understand the delicious predicament I found myself in, and more importantly, the leverage it afforded me. "However," I declared, my voice gaining a firmer edge, "Maplewood Haven is not merely a cost-saving measure, it is an opportunity. An opportunity to provide exceptional care, to create a true haven for our residents, a place where dignity and comfort are paramount. And as the owner, I intend to see that vision realized." For the next hour, I outlined a comprehensive plan. It wasn't a harsh critique of their current efforts, but a visionary roadmap for what Maplewood Haven could and should be. I spoke of tangible improvements, a phased renovation of common areas, ensuring they were not just functional but aesthetically pleasing, creating spaces that invited relaxation and connection. I emphasized the need for enhanced staff training, focusing not only on practical skills but also on empathy, communication, and person-centered care. I proposed a significant investment in the dining experience, moving beyond basic sustenance to offer nutritious and delicious meals that celebrated fresh, local produce. I spoke of transforming the grounds, making the neglected garden a vibrant space with accessible pathways, comfortable seating, and perhaps even a small sensory garden. I didn't shy away from the financial aspect. I detailed the capital investment that would be immediately available to support these initiatives, the budget allocated for upgrades and staff development. This wasn't a plea for resources. It was a declaration of intent, backed by the financial muscle to make it a reality. The management team listened intently, their initial apprehension replaced by a palpable sense of excitement and purpose. They saw in my words not just a directive, but a shared vision. They understood that I wasn't just a passive investor signing checks. I was an active participant, someone who was willing to invest not just capital, but also her time and her deeply held beliefs about care and dignity. They recognized the subtle but undeniable improvements that had already begun, the seeds of change that had been sown even before my children's well-intentioned intervention. Now they were being given the clear mandate and the substantial resources to cultivate them into a thriving reality. As the meeting concluded, the atmosphere in the room was palpably different. The quiet hum of professional anxiety had been replaced by a buzz of anticipation, a shared sense of purpose. They had been given a clear vision and the tools to achieve it. Later that evening, back in my room, I gazed out at the darkening sky. The rectangular patch of grass, still looking somewhat uninspired, seemed less significant now. It was merely a backdrop, a canvas awaiting its true colors. The real substance lay within these walls, within the dedicated individuals who committed themselves to the well-being of others, and within the owner who was now ready to steer this ship towards a brighter, more meaningful horizon. My children, in their own way, had brought me home. They had, quite inadvertently, provided me with the perfect vantage point to not only observe their misguided notions of filial duty, but also to begin the work I had intended all along. To make Maplewood Haven a true testament to genuine care, a place where every resident, including their own mother, felt truly valued and respected. The cheapest nursing home, as they had so proudly proclaimed it to be, was about to become the most exceptional. And the lesson for my children, I suspected, was only just beginning. The true cost, they would soon learn, was not in the price tag, but in the absence of love, respect, and understanding. And that was a price I was no longer willing to pay, nor willing to allow anyone else to impose. The quiet revolution had begun. Over the next few weeks, the tangible changes at Maplewood Haven became undeniable. The once beige walls of the common areas were being repainted in soothing, warm tones. New, comfortable armchairs were appearing, arranged to encourage conversation. The television in the lounge, previously a solitary, imposing box, was now complemented by bookshelves filled with a curated selection of novels, magazines, and even large print newspapers. Brenda, her face often alight with genuine delight, would point out the new additions to residents, her pride mirroring my own. I found myself participating more actively in the life of the establishment. I attended the afternoon teas, engaging in gentle conversations with my fellow residents, listening to their stories, their memories, their quiet anxieties. I learned that Mrs. Gable, a woman with a sharp wit and a penchant for gardening, missed her roses terribly. I discovered that Mr. Henderson, a retired history professor, enjoyed nothing more than discussing the intricacies of the Peloponnesian War. These were not just residents. They were individuals with rich lives, experiences, and preferences that deserved to be acknowledged and celebrated. One afternoon, as I was enjoying a particularly well-prepared slice of lemon drizzle cake, a far cry from the bland institutional fare I had half expected, Brenda approached me with a hesitant smile. "Mrs. Vance," she began, her voice low and respectful, "I wanted to thank you for the changes. It's like night and day. The residents are so much happier. And the staff, we all feel more valued." I met her gaze, a genuine warmth spreading through me. "You are valued, Brenda, more than you know. Your dedication is the heart of this place." She beamed, a blush rising on her cheeks. It's a different feeling now." A more hopeful one. My children, David and Sarah, continued their visits. Though their visits became less frequent, their smug satisfaction slowly giving way to a subtle, almost unconscious bewilderment. They noticed the improvements, of course. They commented on the new paint, the more comfortable furniture, but they attributed it to a general refresh of the facilities, a typical upkeep of a property. They still saw only what they wanted to see, their own fiscal responsibility at play. One Saturday afternoon, David arrived with Sarah in tow, carrying a rather sorry-looking potted geranium. "Mother, how are things?" David asked, his gaze sweeping over the newly decorated lounge, his brow furrowed slightly. "It looks different." "Indeed it does, David," I replied, gesturing to a vacant armchair. We're making some renovations. Sarah, who had always been more observant than her brother, picked up a book from the new shelf. This is a rather nice edition of Pride and Prejudice, Mother. Didn't you used to love Austen? I did, I confirmed, a hint of amusement in my voice, and I still do. It's important to have access to things that nourish the mind and the spirit, wouldn't you agree? David, ever the pragmatist, waved his hand dismissively. Yes, well, it's good you're comfortable. But we've been reviewing the financials. We're quite pleased with the cost-effectiveness of this arrangement, Mother. It's a sensible decision all around. Sensible, I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. And is it sensible, David, to assume that true value lies only in the reduction of expenditure? Is it sensible to overlook the immeasurable worth of dignity, of comfort, of genuine human connection? They exchanged a look, a flicker of unease passing between them. They sensed I was not entirely content with their assessment, but they lacked the tools to articulate why. They were still operating under the framework of financial spreadsheets, unable to comprehend the qualitative aspects of care and well-being. Well, Mother, we can't always have everything we want, Sarah said, her tone placating. This is about being responsible. Responsible, I echoed, my gaze steady. And who exactly is being responsible here, Sarah? Is it those who place their loved ones in institutions without a second thought? Or is it those who ensure that those loved ones are not merely housed, but truly cared for? The unspoken question hung in the air, a silent accusation that neither of them could quite decipher. They were too caught up in their self-congratulatory narrative to see the subtle shift in power, the quiet assertion of my own authority. As they prepared to leave, David cleared his throat. We were thinking of reducing our visits. With you settling in so well, and the facilities being so adequate, we feel we can trust that you're being well looked after. My heart gave a peculiar lurch, not of sadness, but of a growing, potent resolve. They were, in their own peculiar way, trying to abdicate their responsibility, to further distance themselves from the emotional burden of my care. They saw my contentment as an excuse to disengage. That's quite all right, David, I said, my voice calm, betraying none of the internal turbulence. I understand you have your own lives to lead. I will be perfectly fine. After they had gone, I sat in the newly refurbished lounge, the scent of fresh paint and polish in the air. The silence that settled around me was no longer a shroud, but a quiet testament to my own strength, my own agency. They thought they had solved a problem, a financial inconvenience. They had, in fact, unleashed a force they did not comprehend. The next day, I requested a meeting with Arthur. We discussed the next phase of the transformation. I wanted to implement a new resident council, an initiative that would empower the residents to have a greater say in their daily lives, in the activities and services offered at Maplewood Haven. I envisioned regular town hall-style meetings where concerns could be voiced and addressed openly. Arthur, I said, my voice firm, I want to ensure that this establishment is a place where residents feel heard, where their voices matter. My children have, in their own way, shown me the dangers of assumptions. We must ensure that assumption has no place here. An excellent initiative, Eleanor, Arthur replied, his usual professional tone laced with a hint of admiration. It aligns perfectly with your vision of genuine care. My focus then shifted to the staff. Brenda was an obvious asset, a natural leader. I instructed Arthur to begin identifying other staff members who exhibited similar qualities of empathy, dedication, and initiative. We would invest in their professional development, offering training opportunities and career advancement pathways. A motivated and skilled staff was the bedrock of exceptional care. The final, crucial step was to orchestrate a more public revelation of my ownership, but one that would serve a specific purpose. I wanted my children to understand the true nature of their sensible decision in a way that was both undeniable and perhaps a little humbling. I arranged a Founders' Day celebration at Maplewood Haven, an event ostensibly to celebrate the ongoing improvements and the dedication of the staff. I invited the entire senior management team, the staff who had demonstrated exceptional commitment, and, of course, my children. I also discreetly invited a select group of local journalists, focusing on those known for their interest in social enterprises and community initiatives. The day arrived, bright and sunny, a perfect contrast to the muted tones of my children's expectations. The grounds, now dotted with new planters and freshly painted benches, looked welcoming. The common areas buzzed with the gentle murmur of conversation and the clinking of teacups. Brenda, resplendent in a new uniform, moved through the crowd with a grace and confidence that was truly heartwarming. My children arrived, their faces a mixture of mild curiosity and ingrained self-satisfaction. David, ever the businessman, immediately sought out the operations manager, eager to discuss what he likely perceived as the ongoing upkeep costs. Sarah, ever the socialite, was already engaging with some of the more prominent residents. The proceedings began with Arthur delivering a brief, formal introduction, praising the management and staff for their dedication and the significant progress made. Then, he turned to me, a knowing smile on his face. "And now," Arthur announced, his voice carrying through the gathering, "it is my distinct honor to introduce the driving force behind this transformation, the heart and soul of Maplewood Haven, our principal owner, Mrs. Eleanor Vance." A hush fell over the assembly. The journalists scribbled furiously. My children, standing a short distance away, froze. Their confident expressions evaporated, replaced by a stunned disbelief that was almost comical. David's mouth hung slightly open. Sarah's hand flew to her chest. I stood and walked to the front, a confident smile gracing my lips. I wore a smart, elegant dress, a vibrant splash of color that drew all eyes. "Good afternoon, everyone," I began, my voice clear and resonant. "Thank you for joining us today. As many of you know, I have a deep and abiding interest in creating environments that foster well-being and dignity. When I acquired Maplewood Haven a few years ago, it was with the intention of transforming it into a place that truly embodies these values. I paused, letting my gaze sweep over the assembled faces, deliberately allowing it to linger on my children. Their bewildered expressions were a testament to the power of a well-executed surprise. "My children," I continued, my voice softening slightly, though the underlying steel remained, "in their earnest desire to ensure my comfort and financial security, recently facilitated my residency here. They believed, I think, that they were making a prudent, cost-effective decision. And in their own way, they were correct. Maplewood Haven, size gold cost-effective. But its value, as I intend to demonstrate, lies not in its price, but in its profound capacity for providing genuine, compassionate care." I then proceeded to outline the improvements, the new programs, the investments in staff, the vision for the future. I spoke with passion and conviction, not as a resident who had been placed here, but as the owner who was actively shaping its destiny. I pointed out Brenda and the head nurse, recognizing their exceptional contributions, announcing their promotions to key leadership roles within the expanded management structure. As I spoke, I saw the realization dawn on my children's faces. The pride they had felt in their sensible decision was slowly morphing into a dawning horror. They hadn't placed me in a budget establishment. They had, in effect, handed me the keys to my own kingdom. They had inadvertently orchestrated my arrival at the very heart of my own investment strategy. The journalists circled, eager for comments. David, regaining some semblance of his business composure, stammered, "Mother, we had no idea. You never said anything." "And why, David?" I replied, my voice cool and measured. "Would I need to? My actions, I believe, speak for themselves." Sarah, her face pale, managed a weak smile. We're so proud of you, Mother." "Are you, dear?" I replied, a hint of challenge in my tone. "Or are you perhaps contemplating the implications of this revelation for your own financial planning?" The air crackled with unspoken tension. They finally understood. They had attempted to manage their mother, to control her perceived needs and their financial obligations. They had failed to recognize that I was not a problem to be solved, but a force to be reckoned with. The rest of the event was a blur of polite conversation, posed photographs, and my children's increasingly strained attempts to appear nonchalant. As the afternoon drew to a close and the last of the journalists departed, I found myself standing with Arthur, watching my children make their awkward farewells. "Well, Eleanor," Arthur said, a wry smile on his face. That was illuminating. "Indeed, Arthur," I replied, a sense of quiet satisfaction settling over me. A valuable lesson for all involved, I believe. Sometimes, the most effective way to teach someone a lesson is to allow them to discover the truth for themselves. As I watched David and Sarah drive away, their car disappearing down the tree-lined driveway, I knew that our relationship had irrevocably shifted. They had underestimated me, as they always had. They saw a frail, elderly woman, easily managed and dismissed. They didn't see the woman who had built an empire, who understood the complexities of business, and who was, at 78, still capable of orchestrating a most satisfying coup. The true cost of their sensible decision, they would now understand, was not measured in dollars and cents, but in the erosion of trust, the absence of genuine affection, and the profound misjudgment of their own mother's capabilities. Maplewood Haven was no longer just an investment. It was a testament to my enduring strength, a symbol of my defiance, and the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would ensure that true care, dignity, and respect were not just advertised amenities, but the very foundation upon which this haven was built. The cheapest nursing home was about to become the finest, and my children, in their misguided wisdom, had inadvertently provided me with the perfect opportunity to prove it. The quiet revolution had not only begun, it was well underway. The days following the Founders' Day revelation unfolded with a remarkable shift in the atmosphere at Maplewood Haven. The subtle, almost apologetic buzz that had previously permeated the halls was replaced by a confident, forward-looking energy. My children's initial shock had curdled into a palpable, if unspoken, sense of chastened realization. Their visits, though still occurring, were now tinged with a new wariness, a hesitant deference that replaced their former patronizing air. They no longer spoke of cost-effectiveness or sensible decisions. Instead, their conversations revolved around my well-being, my comfort, and my opinions on the ongoing renovations. The script, it seemed, had been definitively rewritten. One afternoon, during what had become a somewhat ritualistic, yet now less strained, tea with my children, David cleared his throat, a nervous habit he'd developed whenever he was about to broach a sensitive topic. "Mother," he began, his gaze darting around the now elegantly appointed lounge, "we've been discussing the new wing you're planning for the South Side. The architect's sketches are quite impressive." I smiled, taking a slow sip of my Earl Grey. "Indeed they are, David. We're aiming for a more integrated, natural, light-filled environment. I want to ensure that even those with limited mobility can enjoy the gardens." Sarah, who had been quietly flipping through a book of art prints I'd acquired for the common room, chimed in, "It's lovely, Mother, truly. But are you sure this is all necessary? We were trying to be mindful of your legacy, you see, not to burden you unnecessarily." I set down my teacup, my gaze steady. "My legacy, Sarah, is not built on the absence of expenditure, but on the presence of purpose and the quality of life I can provide for others. My burden, as you put it, is to ensure that Maplewood Haven becomes a beacon of exemplary care. This wing is a crucial part of that vision." David's brow furrowed. "But the financial projections, Mother, they're substantial. We've always prided ourselves on fiscal responsibility. This level of investment." "Fiscal responsibility, David," I interrupted, my voice firm but calm, "is not merely about minimizing outgoing costs. It is about maximizing the return on investment, not just in financial terms, but in human terms. The substantial investment you speak of will ensure that Maplewood Haven provides an unparalleled standard of care, attracting residents who value quality and staff who are rewarded for their dedication. It is an investment in people, in comfort, and in dignity. These are returns that far outweigh any balance sheet." They exchanged another one of those sibling glances, a silent conversation I had long since learned to interpret. It was a mixture of disbelief, a dawning understanding of their own financial myopia, and perhaps a flicker of genuine respect for my unwavering conviction. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Arthur and I were meticulously executing the next phase of my grand design. The initial subtle shifts had laid the groundwork, but now, with my ownership publicly established, the true transformation could accelerate. Arthur, ever the master strategist, had already initiated a comprehensive review of the staff. Brenda, as anticipated, was a natural leader. Her innate empathy and dedication were recognized, and she was swiftly promoted to head of resident engagement, a new role created to foster stronger connections between staff, residents, and their families. Her purview now included organizing social events, facilitating resident feedback sessions, and ensuring that individual needs and preferences were met with genuine attention. The improved linens and meals continued, but they were now merely the visible tip of an iceberg of systemic change. A rigorous staff training program was implemented, focusing not only on practical caregiving skills, but also on communication, active listening, and understanding the psychological needs of an aging population. We brought in specialists to conduct workshops on dementia care, palliative care, and end-of-life support. The aim was to cultivate a staff that was not just competent, but compassionate and truly invested in the well-being of each resident. The physical transformation of Maplewood Haven continued with a renewed sense of purpose. The neglected gardens were being meticulously revitalized. Accessible pathways were being laid, winding through carefully curated flower beds. Comfortable, weather-resistant seating was strategically placed, encouraging residents to spend time outdoors, enjoying the fresh air and the company of others. A small, enclosed sensory garden featuring fragrant herbs, textured plants, and wind chimes was being designed, specifically catering to residents with visual or cognitive impairments. The common areas were undergoing a more significant overhaul. The stark, utilitarian lounges were being redecorated with a softer palette of colors, comfortable, ergonomic furniture, and tasteful artwork. The addition of dedicated, quiet reading nooks, complete with soft lighting and a variety of literary offerings, was particularly well received. The dining room, once a functional space, was being transformed into a more welcoming and elegant setting, with improved acoustics, table linens, and a menu that showcased seasonal, locally sourced ingredients prepared with a culinary flair. The idea was to elevate the dining experience from mere sustenance to a true source of pleasure and social interaction. I found myself actively involved in these developments, attending planning meetings with Arthur and the senior management team, and more importantly, spending time with the residents. These interactions were invaluable. They provided me with first-hand insights into their lives, their desires, and their frustrations. I learned of Mrs. Gable's yearning for her prize-winning roses, and the new sensory garden was designed with a specific section dedicated to her favorite varieties. Mr. Henderson, the retired history professor, discovered a shared passion for ancient Rome with one of the newly hired activity coordinators, leading to impromptu historical discussions that enlivened the afternoon tea sessions. These personal connections were the lifeblood of my vision. They were the tangible proof that my substantial investment was yielding the most valuable returns of all: happiness, engagement, and a renewed sense of purpose for those who called Maplewood Haven home. One crisp autumn afternoon, I was overseeing the placement of a new chaise longue in the sunroom when Brenda approached me, her usual bright smile a little more subdued than usual. "Mrs. Vance," she began, her voice holding a note of concern, "we've had a bit of an issue with Mr. Davies in room 3B. He's become quite agitated about the changes to his room. He's very attached to his old armchair, you see." I nodded, understanding immediately. Change, even for the better, could be unsettling for some. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Brenda. Has anyone spoken with him? Explained the purpose of the new furniture?" Brenda wrung her hands slightly. "We've tried, Mrs. Vance, but he's quite insistent. He says the new chair just isn't the same. It doesn't fit him." I smiled gently. "Of course, and rightly so. We're not trying to erase their pasts, Brenda, but to enhance their present." Let's go and see Mr. Davies. We found Mr. Davies, a man who had once been a renowned carpenter, sitting forlornly in his room, the new plush armchair conspicuously absent. His old armchair, a sturdy, well-worn piece of furniture, sat in its usual place, a testament to years of comfort and familiarity. "Mr. Davies," I said, my voice soft and welcoming. "I'm Eleanor Vance. I understand you're not entirely happy with the new armchair." He looked at me, his eyes roomy but sharp. "It's not the same, miss. This chair remembers my wife's knitting. The way she used to sit beside me when I worked. That new thing." He gestured vaguely towards the hallway. "It's soulless." I sat down on the edge of his bed, nodding in understanding. "You're absolutely right, Mr. Davies. And I apologize. We should have considered that. We're aiming to make Maplewood Haven a place of comfort and familiarity, not just for the present, but for the memories that shape us." I turned to Brenda. "Brenda, I'd like you to arrange for Mr. Davies' armchair to be returned to its rightful place. Perhaps we can explore options for reupholstering it in a more durable, yet still comfortable, fabric, if he'd like. And, more importantly," I added, looking back at Mr. Davies, "we'll make sure that any future changes are discussed with our residents beforehand. Your comfort and your sense of home are paramount." Mr. Davies' face broke into a wide, grateful smile. "You mean I can keep my chair?" "You most certainly can, Mr. Davies," I assured him, "and we'll ensure it's as comfortable and familiar as you remember." As Brenda went to make the necessary arrangements, Mr. Davies looked at me with a newfound warmth. "Thank you, Mrs. Vance. Thank you for understanding." "It is my privilege, Mr. Davies," I replied, genuinely touched. "It is my privilege to understand." This small interaction, while seemingly minor, reinforced the core principle of my vision, that true care is about understanding and respecting the individual, their history, and their deeply held attachments. It was a lesson that the cost-saving mindset of my children had entirely overlooked. The success of the Founders' Day event had a ripple effect beyond Maplewood Haven. The local press, having been privy to the unfolding story of the enigmatic owner's grand vision, began to feature articles about the renaissance of Maplewood Haven. They highlighted the tangible improvements, the commitment to resident well-being, and the innovative approach to elder care. This positive publicity, naturally, attracted attention from other potential investors and philanthropic organizations, further solidifying Maplewood Haven's reputation as a leader in its field. This burgeoning success also brought a new level of attention from my children, albeit of a different nature. They began to seek my advice on their own business ventures, impressed by my ability to navigate complex financial and operational challenges. David, in particular, seemed to be recalibrating his understanding of value. One evening he called me, his voice unusually subdued. "Mother, we're considering an acquisition for our firm. It's a bit of a turnaround situation. The market's tough, and the operational costs are high. We're struggling with the initial projections." I listened patiently, recognizing the echo of my own early business days. "David," I said, "sometimes the greatest asset is not what you see on the balance sheet, but the human capital and the underlying potential for growth. Have you truly assessed the dedication of the staff? Have you considered the long-term impact of investing in their skills and well-being?" There was a pause. "Well, we focused on the redundancies, Mother. Cost-saving measures, you know." Quote. I sighed, a gentle, almost imperceptible sound. "Cost-saving can be a short-sighted strategy, David. True value is created through investment, through nurturing, through building something that endures. Consider the intrinsic worth of a motivated workforce, the loyalty that comes from being valued. These are intangible assets that can ultimately drive profitability." He was silent for a long moment, absorbing my words. "So you're saying we should be looking at investing more, not cutting back?" "Precisely," I confirmed. "Sometimes, the most responsible decision is the one that requires the greatest courage and the most substantial commitment. Focus on the long-term vision, David. Build something that matters, not just something that's cheap." He thanked me, his voice tinged with a new respect, and I knew that perhaps, just perhaps, the lessons I was imparting within the walls of Maplewood Haven were beginning to extend beyond its manicured lawns. As the seasons turned, Maplewood Haven continued to flourish. The south wing, designed to seamlessly blend with the existing architecture, was progressing ahead of schedule. It would house spacious, light-filled suites, each with its own private balcony overlooking the revitalized gardens. It also included a state-of-the-art therapy suite, complete with hydrotherapy pools and specialized rehabilitation equipment, ensuring that residents could receive comprehensive care and support within the familiar environment of their home. The staff, now a highly trained and deeply committed team, radiated a palpable sense of pride and purpose. Brenda, in her new leadership role, was instrumental in fostering a culture of open communication and continuous improvement. She organized regular resident forums where individuals could voice their concerns, share feedback, and even suggest new activities or improvements. These forums were not mere formalities, they were genuine opportunities for dialogue, and the feedback received was actively incorporated into the ongoing development of Maplewood Haven. One such forum, held on a blustery November afternoon, saw Mrs. Gable, her face beaming, present her proposal for an expanded rose garden, complete with a small trellis and shaded seating area. The management team, with my enthusiastic endorsement, immediately approved her request. Her joy at seeing her beloved roses given a prominent place and her contribution recognized and valued was a testament to the very ethos I was striving to cultivate. Even my children's visits began to carry a different weight. They no longer arrived with the self-congratulatory air of those who had made a sensible decision. Instead, they would inquire about the latest developments, listen intently to my plans, and occasionally offer insights from their own business experience, albeit with a newfound humility. During one visit, Sarah, looking at a framed photograph of the newly completed sensory garden, turned to me. "Mother, it's truly remarkable what you've done here. It's more than just a nursing home, isn't it?" "It is, Sarah," I replied, my gaze fixed on the vibrant blooms. "It's a sanctuary, a place where dignity is preserved, where comfort is paramount, and where every individual is treated with the respect they deserve. It's a testament to the fact that true value is not measured in pennies saved, but in lives enriched." David, who had been reviewing the latest financial reports with Arthur, now a trusted confidant and a regular presence in my strategic planning, interjected. "We've been looking at the occupancy rates, Mother. They're significantly higher than projected, and the waiting list, it's growing." A quiet satisfaction bloomed within me, as it should, David. When you offer genuine quality, people recognize it. They seek it out. This is the true measure of success, wouldn't you agree? Not simply occupying a space, but creating a destination. Quote, "They finally seemed to grasp the magnitude of what I had accomplished, not just as an investor, but as a woman who had taken a neglected establishment and transformed it into something truly extraordinary. They had initially seen Maplewood Haven as a problem to be managed, a financial burden to be minimized. They had failed to see it as an opportunity, a canvas upon which I could paint a vision of true care, a legacy of compassion and unwavering dignity. The initial impetus for my presence at Maplewood Haven had been born from their misguided attempt to manage me. They had, in their own way, brought me here, believing they were making a fiscally sound decision. They had succeeded, in their own unique way, in bringing me home. But home, I was proving, was not merely a place to reside. It was a place to nurture, to build, and to create something of enduring value. The cheapest nursing home, as they had so confidently proclaimed it to be, was indeed becoming the most exceptional. The lesson was not lost on them, nor on me. The true cost of their decision had not been the price tag they'd so proudly discussed, but the absence of understanding, the lack of empathy, and the profound misjudgment of their own mother's capabilities, and her unwavering commitment to creating a world where age was not a detractor from life, but a testament to its richness. The quiet revolution, born from their well-intentioned but ultimately misguided actions, had blossomed into a vibrant, life-affirming reality. a testament to the power of vision, resilience, and the enduring pursuit of dignity. My children had inadvertently handed me the reins, and I was driving this remarkable establishment towards a future they could only have dreamed of, a future where every resident, including their own mother, was truly valued and profoundly respected.